Should we go ahead and get started? Yeah, I
That
think
sounds good to me.
we have a good number of folks joining us, and we're going to be recording this, so any others who weren't able to join will be able to watch it later. I won't take too much time, but I just want to say welcome to everyone and thank you for being here. And introduce Chris Biles, who was, we were very fortunate to have Chris detailed into our office. She was in a leadership program through the Foreign Agriculture Service at the U.S. Department of Agriculture. And she looked us up and offered to come to our office, and we took her up on it, and we're very pleased that we did. The main focus of her work was this study that you're going to be hearing about. She did some other things as well, but we were very pleased with how she carried out the study. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Chris.
Thank you so much, Steve. And thanks to Rudy and John as well, and everybody on the National Park Service Office of International Affairs team for hosting me and for supporting me as I worked through this project with you. And thank you everybody for joining today and for your interest in the National Park Service Sister Park Initiative. So I'll start off today with a big picture, kind of a background of NPS-OIA, and then get into a description of the Sister Park Initiative itself. And then I'll go into some details about the study that I did and my findings.
Chris, before you start, let me just mention that we will have time for questions and discussion afterwards. And I realized I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Stephen Morris. I'm the Chief of the International Affairs Office here at the Park Service. So with that, over to you.
Perfect. Thank you. So as I said, we can start off with the big picture here. You can see on the slide the National Park Service mission statement, and at the very end there, emphasizing "and the world." And that's really where NPS, Office of International Affairs, comes in. So OIA works with National Park Service sites and partners both in the US and abroad. Their work includes implementation of the U.S. World Heritage Convention, so working on those United States World Heritage sites, the International Volunteers in Parks Program, IVIP, a variety of technical assistance projects and activities as what their partnerships allow, and then the Sister Park Initiative itself. So all of this work is really to facilitate the exchange of best practices in natural and cultural heritage management around the world. So the purpose of the Sister Park Initiative, it's to provide an opportunity for National Park Service sites to establish a partnership with national parks or other types of protected areas in other countries. And ideally, that is based on commonalities at the two sites. The pairing of sister parks is essentially the twinning concept and model. And so a little background on that, the goal is really to have direct sharing and learning based on the commonalities. So the similarities or common needs of both protected areas. That could be shared natural features or cultural similarities. It could also be shared management challenges like extensive visitor use or wildfire response, certain adaptations to climate change, things like that. So the goal is to build long-term relationships and also global networks that are centered around the common mission of cultural and environmental conservation, those that really allow for information sharing and collaboration. And ideally, with that long-term focus that I mentioned, the collaboration and activities are then based on the evolving needs of the partners over time. So the Sister Park Initiative process, just to give some background on that, NPS-OIA, Office of International Affairs, assists with matching of the sites, pairing. The sites then typically work together to develop an arrangement document. And that document outlines the general plan for the partnership, which those usually last about 5 years, and there's the possibility of renewals. That arrangement document is then cleared and signed, and that process is often at some point facilitated by the Department of State, usually with that final signing. And it's important to note that the initiative is not a funded program. And so these arrangement documents do reflect that. So National Park Service has seen that some sister park partnerships are very long-standing and involve many activities and engagements that do evolve over time, depending on the changing needs of the sites, while others might kind of wax and wane, come and go, or may simply die out over time. So this segues into the purpose of the study itself. So the purpose was to conduct an in-depth review of the Sister Park Initiative, make comparisons with other twinning partnerships or programs for protected areas specifically all over the world, describe the challenges and highlight the best practices and the lessons learned from these programs and partnerships, and then provide some recommendations as well that could help the National Park Service approach, help improve it for the Sister Park Initiative itself. So the strategy for this study was determined with direct input and approval from NPS-OIA. And again, thank you to Steve and Rudy and John and all the others for their support throughout the process. The study involved a number of activities. So I completed an assessment of the current status of National Park Service sister parks to determine and also document the levels of activity and engagement. I also researched other types of twinning programs, both within and outside of the US federal government, to examine how others develop and manage these types of partnerships and programs. I determined potential interviewees and developed interview questions, and then interviewed 31 individuals between February and April of this year. And the research and the interviews then went into creating and writing the final report on this study. Just a bit more on the interviews themselves. So as we identified potential interviewees, I organized them into a few different categories to ensure that, my questions were tailored to their experiences and involvement. So the first, you can see these listed on the screen, National Park Service personnel involved in sister park partnerships and their foreign counterparts, excuse me. So those involved at the parks agencies. Other sister park partners outside of park agencies, and then individuals involved with other twinning programs all over the world. So those that don't really have a connection specifically to sister parks. Some other items to note as well, the interview questions were shared prior to the meetings and referenced during the interviews to guide discussion. And while I did not record the interviews, I did take extensive notes, and all of that has been documented and saved to the Office of International Affairs files. I have here on this slide and the next just a list, and I know it's there's a lot of text here, but just wanted to give you a general overview of an idea of the folks who I interviewed and where they were coming from. So 10 different National Park Service sister parks. The foreign counterparts there, I had 4 of those, and then some other partners that are involved in the Sister Park Initiative. And then on this slide, I have the list of other twinning programs, individuals from other twinning programs that I interviewed. So you see up there a couple that are, US federal government still, also some universities and other entities as well that do work both in North America and also all over the world. I now just want to briefly cover how the report is organized. So beyond those introductory pieces that you're expecting to see, the report really has 5 main sections to examine twinning partnerships. The benefits, a look at the arrangements and activities more specifically for sister parks, and then a dive into the challenges of and also the opportunities for these sorts of partnerships. And the report then concludes with a recommendation section for the Sister Park Initiative. And in addition to appendices that detail the interviews, so a list of the interviewees, and also the questions that I posed, there are 2 case studies that are provided in Appendix 1. And those are really fun. It's a deep dive into 2 examples. So if you ever request the report, highly recommend focusing on those. Just as a little teaser, the first case study illustrates an example of an ongoing sister park initiative and partnership that really built on the success through the foundational relationships that it set up. And that was Glacier Bay National Park and Preserve and the West Norwegian Fjords World Heritage Site in Norway. And then the second details a partnership model, so a 3-legged stool approach that's utilized by Saguaro National Park to find success even with limited resources and limited staff capacity. All right, looking at some numbers here. So, as I mentioned, alongside conducting the interviews and the research and writing the report, I also tried to figure out the levels of activity for the partnerships. And so I reached out to the current superintendents of all the National Park Service sites that were recorded as being Sister Park Initiative participants. And that was for general records management, confirming dates, getting up-to-date contact information, things like that. But it was also to determine those levels of activity for the partnerships and kind of analyze it just a little bit. So of the 70 total partnerships that were recorded, 24 confirmed as being active. And I defined active as having at least one communication, simple communication, or some sort of engagement in the past year. So that was about 34%. And then that left 66% or 46 as inactive. So either having no communication or engagement in the past year or more, or not responding to the records management inquiries that I sent out. And you can see those numbers broken down there. So in the second table, the numbers are further broken down by region to show the percentage of currently active and ongoing partnerships by region. And I thought this was interesting to share and important to note just that the regions that show the highest percentage of active partnerships are North America, and that's Canada and Mexico, and then also Europe. So we'll connect some of the reasons for this in the challenges that I described for this study. So moving on to the key findings, for the purpose of this presentation, I'll really focus on taking us through the key findings related to benefits, challenges, and the opportunities for the Sister Park Initiative. So to touch on the benefits, as already mentioned, this initiative directly helps National Park Service to achieve its mission. The Sister Park Initiative greatly impacts how the National Park Service is viewed globally. Many interviewees noted that countries see the U.S. as a nation of wealth with a park service that is the envy of the world. So it should be an expected and routine activity for the U.S. to support other parks and protected areas internationally. It also demonstrates the goodwill of the U.S. and can have geopolitical benefits as we make connections with people who are really positioned at a range of levels within and beyond the formal political hierarchies in other countries. So in terms of diplomacy, it really emphasizes the common ground and the shared values between the U.S. and other countries. And so it serves sort of as a environmental diplomacy, if you will. The partnerships and collaborations based on conservation are also often very much welcomed by other countries, so they can really pave the way for other diplomatic efforts. In terms of the learning, Park Service personnel can learn a great deal from participating in these partnerships. When they are based on common resources, management practices, challenges, et cetera, what is learned at one site can often be applied to the other and vice versa, back and forth, ongoing as they're able to participate. Some other benefits for park personnel. So across the board, interviewees made the point that sister park engagements help park personnel. They can become more globally minded citizens. They can better understand their own relevance for the mission of conservation, how they fit into everything. And it really can revitalize their passion for their work and also, therefore, increase morale and motivation. So there's no shortage of challenges for the Sister Park Initiative, along with the other types of twinning programs that I looked at. One challenge is political tensions and turbulence. So this can heavily influence the operating environment of Sister Park partnerships and, in general, the success of global and regional networks as a whole. So things like elections and political unrest, clashing political agendas, changes of administration, or changes of appointed officials, shifting priorities, all of that can go into this. Communications as well. Many individuals interviewed identified that communication was a challenge for the partnerships, but not necessarily showstoppers. So it could be time-consuming bureaucracy that could be the challenge, or connectivity issues, cultural differences, and also language barriers were identified. Access to funding and also travel, which I'll get to, but access to funding. So all parties interviewed noted that funding is really required to keep twinning partnerships alive and flourishing. But of course, the Sister Park Initiative does lack consistent funding, and that often limits in-person engagement and participation. It limits the travel. So in terms of the travel, also the time and energy required to travel to certain parks, both in the US and other countries, can be a challenge. And it's important to note too that the expense for individuals who are coming from parks or protected areas in developing countries to visit National Park Service sites in the US can be much greater when you compare it to National Park Service personnel travel to and within those developing countries. So this, along with the access to funding, are definitely challenges that can be easily connected to the differences that we saw in those percentages that were broken down by region. Just a bit more about the funding. Because of the lack of funding, the Sister Park Initiative can perpetuate what is seen as an intrinsic imbalance between National Park Service sites. So in large National Park Service sites, especially those big ones with SES superintendents, they have a different level of resources available to them. And that then enables a different level of participation in the Sister Park Initiative when you compare it to small or medium-sized parks. Moving on to staff time and capacity. So these collaborations are often driven by individuals, champions, and therefore they are really dependent on those singular, passionate personnel. So because of this, the partnerships can become dormant or could even totally unravel when those champions move on. They could change jobs or retire or just get reappointed. So it takes a lot of time then to build the relationships that are a foundation for twinning partnerships. So when a key individual moves on, that relationship needs to be rebuilt from the start, and that can be quite an effort. Also, everyone interviewed noted that protected area personnel, both in the US and all over the world, are stretched thin with numerous responsibilities, and they are often really too busy to, on their own especially, add something like the Sister Park Initiative to their plates. And even if that task is assigned to them kind of on a more official level by park management, the responsibility of building and maintaining an entire sister park relationship is a very daunting task, especially if it's just assigned to one individual. Another key challenge is the informality of the initiative. And this challenge really touches on, amplifies the other challenges already discussed. So without consistent support, both internally and externally, from leadership, and without the responsibilities formally assigned to park personnel as duties, the rigor of the initiative is questioned. And that makes justification for and also the optics of the initiative much more difficult. These partnerships can take years to build. It's all about those long-term relationships. And that means that the results and benefits are seen in a matter of years, not immediately. And so that can cause them to be more susceptible to failure. Fewer agencies or donors are willing to invest in the long term, the less tangible, but sometimes it's definitely worth it. And that leads me into opportunities. So NPS can prioritize and grow this initiative beyond what it is now, starting with a top-down change of the perception of sister parks, the what, the why, the how. NPS can move away from the perception that these partnerships are just junkets, so activities that parks employees can enjoy without having any real impact. And instead, park personnel, more than just one ideally, could be directed to devote time to building the partnerships, making it a formal duty. NPS could instead make this initiative an institutional commitment that is really touted and celebrated and promoted and prioritized. Succession planning is also an important opportunity. You can ensure enough well-versed in the partnership and are formally known by foreign counterparts and vice versa prior to any actual personnel changes. Oh, have I lost you all, or are you still there?
Still here.
Still here.
Still here.
I think she lost us as she was.
You may have
asking.
froze up though.
Yeah.
I'm not hearing you now.
She may have to sign out and sign back in.
She's back.
Back. Oh, good.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great. Interesting. Okay, connectivity issues over here at the USDA building. All right, am I still sharing or no?
No.
Okay, give me 1 minute here. Let me exit
Connectivity
out
issues
of...
just across a few blocks in downtown Washington. Imagine connecting to another sister park in another country.
There we go, exactly. Okay, let me see if I can get this shared again. There we go here. Okay, can everybody see the opportunity slide?
Yep.
Okay, and it's the correct view with the full slide taking the screen?
Yep.
Great. Okay, let's see. When did I lose you? Did you all, were you with me when I transitioned to the opportunity slide?
Yes. Yes, we were.
You were on the
Okay, did
second
you-
bullet.
Okay, succession planning?
Well, the second one, I think dedicated time
Oh.
maybe, or succession, somewhere
Oh,
between
great.
the two.
Okay. Okay, gotcha. I'll just hop in here, and I'm sorry if I'm repeating. My apologies. So, talking about the change in perception, park personnel could be directed to devote time to building the partnerships and making it a formal duty for them. NPS could also make this initiative an institutional commitment that is really celebrated and prioritized. And then talking about succession planning, that's also an important opportunity, really ensuring that enough personnel are versed in the partnership and that all counterparts, whether they be foreign or vice versa, they know who to contact should there be personnel changes. Then getting into funding. So NPS could invest in a formalized sister park initiative that is codified, held as a formal program in the Office of International Affairs, and even designated a small appropriated budget each year. Even the provision of a small budget could support a few sister parks and fund a few trips and activities each year. And I really do think that would increase the quality and also the level of engagement. Folks would see that there would be an opportunity for funding, even if it's not every single year, and that would increase engagement. Travel, as I've mentioned, is also really essential for these programs, and that's the in-person interactions. So if personal connections are established through an initial in-person visit, continuing the relationship in a virtual space becomes a lot easier. It's also important to have a team approach, so involving multiple individuals that are able to connect on both sides. And that just makes the partnership less susceptible to staff turnover, but also increases engagement and the breadth of the impact that the initiative can have in both places. Communications. So especially focused externally, it could really build public interest in the ways that our parks and lands are connected to those of other countries. Featuring stories of sister parks would improve the justification of the initiative. It would help the public see what it means to have a sister park relationship, the why, and it could also really increase pride and excitement for our national parks and also awareness of parks and protected areas, both at home and abroad, along with their conservation missions. Work plans and reporting. This is a fun one. So not all, but many did note that the development of a work plan would be decidedly beneficial. Work plans go beyond the declared interests that you might find in an arrangement document at the start and establish shared intent and then help reach impact through action. More concrete planning could also provide more motivation for personnel at both parks to work together and meet their goals. In the reporting, all groups interviewed stated that some basic level of reporting is important, not just for sister parks, but also for other twinning partnerships too. And that really helps to ensure that partners are taking the time, even if it's just informally or very quickly, to check in with each other and determine what is working, what needs to change, how each side is benefiting from the collaboration. It just encourages that communication and ensures that they are continuing to work together. Also, another opportunity, collaborations beyond just the sister park partners. So collaborations, of course, as we all know, allow entities to accomplish more together than they would otherwise be able to accomplish on their own. So working together on things like trainings, research, you can find funding opportunities together, and then in general gain more weight and influence in the field together. And there are a number of collaboration opportunities that I identified in the report, like networking approaches, university connections, science-led partnerships, looking at that research piece, regional events, things like that. I also outline in the report some specific opportunities for NPS-OIA, and those involved leading the way with framing the perspectives and formalizing the goals, expectations, and also resources for the Sister Park Initiative. So that then leads me into recommendations. So these recommendations are based on my interviews and also conversations with NPS-OIA personnel. The first here, establish and formalize clear criteria to inform the selection of sister parks. This could help ensure that sister parks do in fact share the goals and intrinsic similarities that would create that needed foundation for a sustainable partnership. It could also allow NPS-OIA to point to the established criteria and say no when facing pressure to establish sister parks for sites that, may not be the best fit for an arrangement. I will note here that support from NPS leadership giving OIA this authority would be required. Also, requiring the development of a basic work plan by the end of the first year of the partnership to be co-developed by both sister parks, and then also having a basic level of partnership evaluation through formal reporting, even if it's just simple reports. And OIA could provide some basic templates for that to clarify expectations and give partners something to work with. So then on that note, the best way to ensure clarity and understanding of any initiative or program, its goals, its requirements, its expectations, is to state that information in simple, organized, and easy to access guidance documents. So for example, OIA could create and make widely available, an overview of the program, the criteria to qualify for a sister park partnership, steps in the process to establish an arrangement, requirements and performance expectations for the partnership, any templates for the arrangement documents or templates for work plans or reporting if those are to be required, and then even including a few example documents that folks can reference. Also, should NPS-OIA wish to control the flow of sister park requests, it could create a formal cycle for annual or biannual, whatever period, review and selection of new sister park arrangements. NPS-OIA could establish a competitive-like process for submission of sister park partnership plans as applications, if you will, and then have an established period to select and move forward with those that are best suited. Another recommendation, OIA could assess the existing arrangements each year with the help of short reports, if those are required, and then more formally reclassify a partnership if the arrangement is expired or if the partners have not engaged for a designated period of time, things like that, if it's more on the inactive side of things. And for the partners, knowing about this reclassification cycle upfront would provide motivation for continued engagement and participation over time. Outreach. I had quite a few recommendations for outreach. There are many opportunities, I think, to increase it, not only to advertise the initiative and showcase its positive impacts, but also to increase collaboration and program overlap to potentially pave the way for additional activities and even potentially funding and travel. The purpose of any advertising would not be so much to increase the number of sister parks, but it would help to clarify the expectations of the initiative, show that NPS really values and supports it, and it would make the goals, the intentions, the requirements, and also the benefits widely known and understood and celebrated too. So all in all, NPS has the opportunity to show that it's proud of the initiative and its international partnerships. I think great stories come from these collaborations, and they are very easy to showcase and share, and many of the interviewees really noted this as low-hanging fruit. And then lastly, I recommend formalizing sister park partnership activities as duties for park personnel. Parks could even, add these duties to position descriptions and integrate them into how the park functions, incorporating them into personal and park level annual work plans, things like that. So in conclusion, I'll take us back to the NPS mission statement: to preserve unimpaired the natural and cultural resources and values of the national park system for the enjoyment, education, and inspiration of this and future generations. This is a goal that is shared by other countries as well. And twinning programs and partnerships, including the Sister Park Initiative, really do have the power to unite people and countries over the common cause and passion for conservation. The statement also says that the National Park Service cooperates with partners to extend the benefits of natural and cultural resource conservation and outdoor recreation throughout this country and the world, as I pointed out at the beginning. Conservation efforts cannot be limited to the US and will not reach their full impact if they are kept within human-created borders. We all know this. There is a great need for networks and collaboration between people, protected areas, and countries for the success of conservation. The Sister Park Initiative really does serve the unique purpose of uniting the US with other countries in ways that have the potential to significantly enhance and enable more effective conservation efforts. And that's for the benefit of this and future generations, for our cultural and natural resources in this country and the entire world. So in conclusion, this is a valuable initiative and should be given the priority, support, the resources, and the opportunity to realize its full potential and make the greatest impact possible. So with that, I would like to really express the fullness of my gratitude for those who dedicated their time and energy to speaking with me and sharing so many stories, so much information that really served as, I wrote here, the backbone of the study, but it was the meat. It was the study itself. So you made the study what it was. And I would also, again, like to thank the individuals at NPSOA for placing their confidence in me to conduct this study and produce this report for them during my 10-week assignment. And I sincerely enjoyed working with all of you. And then you'll see on this slide instructions for obtaining the report. You can email John Putnam, and then my contact information as well. So thank you everybody for your time and attention, and we can transition now to addressing any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Chris. Excellent presentation, and reflects on the great work you did with this study. I know we have a number of the folks you spoke with in your interviews who are joining us today, and maybe they have some reaction. This is the first time that you all who participated are seeing this. I should note that. Craig.
Good morning. Thank you very much for your work on our behalf, as well as you, Steve, and all your folks there. So I have a question. Will these findings be presented to leadership, including the regional directors? Because sometimes I find that there might be a lack of understanding as to what the value of these agreements are. It would be very helpful to hear it coming from an outside source, an outside perspective like this.
We haven't actually discussed whether we would do that, but I think that's an interesting idea. You know, we'll have to take it up our chain to see what the opportunity would be to, I mean, I'd certainly like to, before we circulated the report too widely, I'd like to give all of the folks who are involved in Sister Park partnerships a chance to give us their feedback on it. But maybe following that, we can look into how we would elevate it to the wider NPS leadership ranks.
I think focusing on what you did with the actual engagement and real accomplishments that are occurring will be the key to making this significant to people who understand it's more than just, gee, you like to travel to other countries. Of course, I think sometimes there's a misunderstanding that the 24 to 30-hour flights each way to spend a couple of days working with our partners is not the pinnacle of enjoyment for everyone. But there's a lot more involved to it than that. And not only getting engagement with real work projects, which Steve knows we've got examples we've provided for you over the years. In fact, our crew's there right now doing some critical work, repairing trails for the folks in Slovenia at our sister park. But something that you touched on that I think is critically important is all of us move on at some point. And unless this is integrated into the parks program, it will be at the whim of the superintendents. So I may be very interested in international relationships and park sister park agreements, but the person coming in may say, hey, that sounds great, but I'm just not into that. So one of the things we're looking at, and I think Steve, you and Rudy have said you've looked at this as well, is engaging our partners in these agreements so that when the person who is most engaged in the park moves on, that continues to live on in the relationship. So right now we're working with our partners to establish not only sister parks, but sister gateway cities that are associated with those parks so that you get citizen involvement on both sides of the equation. So we have someone here and in Europe in a gateway city, or here and in Asia in a gateway city. And even if the interest at the park temporarily wanes, if you've got those people engaged, that will carry it on until interest can be built back in the park again. So we'll report to you how that's going. We've got appointments next week to talk with some of the municipal leaders in the villages inside our sister park in creating gateway communities to complement the sister park arrangement. So I'll let someone else talk from here, but thank you.
That's great. Thanks, Craig.
If I could actually jump in real quick just to kind of advertise the case studies again, the second one that I had mentioned with the three-legged stool approach for saguaro, that involves, one partner being, or one leg of the stool being the parks and park agencies themselves. But the other two legs, one is the potentially non-governmental organizations that can help really build the trust and increase the capacity for activities. And then the third leg involves funding partners that could potentially support the efforts of the sister parks, their activities, et cetera. So just wanted to, flag that and encourage reading of the case studies as well if you get your hands on the report.
Got a couple other ones. Rick Slade. You're muted.
I unmuted, then muted, then camera on, then camera. I could turn the camera off. I could keep switching back and forth. No, that was great, Christine. I really thought your findings were right on point. I thought it was a great summary of the takeaways. And I think when I look at what you're proposing, to me, it just feels like capacity building, and it's investing in processes, possibly funding, but mostly just sort of standards that would help to hold everybody accountable. And that includes those of us who maintain these relationships and maintain them more as one-to-one kind of, it's like we've been talking about. A superintendent's interested, something occurs, that person leaves, the thing goes away. So everything you put out there to me makes a whole lot of sense. And some of it doesn't require the director's approval. I get it that some of it requires higher level approvals. But I'd be interested in trying that and have been intending to use some of those tools you mentioned anyway. So I just want to say that I'm happy to help build some of that from the ground up if it would help in terms of just getting some models out there. And otherwise, really hope we can lean into your recommendations because I think they're great. I think they would do a lot to build the reputation and effectiveness of the Sister Park program at a national level. So, thank you.
Thank you.
I think somebody else had their hand up. I don't know. Maybe it went away. Oh, Rebecca.
Yeah, it wasn't me with my hand up, but I'll take advantage now anyway. So for those, I think I might be the only Canadian on the lines. I'm manager for international affairs at Parks Canada, and I just want to compliment you and Christine on the work that you did here. We had a great conversation, which got me thinking about things that I hadn't, like in a fresh way, I hadn't been thinking about. And I will be shamelessly leaning on your report when it comes in to further things at Parks Canada as well, because so many things are in parallel between our organizations. So thanks for that. And I did have one question. I think it was on your opportunities slide, perhaps. You mentioned if you're gearing down out of, like looking for the criteria to get out of a sister park relationship, I think. I might have the wrong slide there. Did you have any further thoughts or comments on that? We find ourselves in a few of these that just easier to re-sign. And but senior management rightfully so are questioning that as well.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and something that I thought a lot about because it's I think everybody who has participated in sister park partnerships, it's valuable to keep them in the loop, right? Like if some communication goes out that's applicable to, those who have participated over the years or who might be wanting to re-engage more, it's good to keep that contact info. It's good to keep them in the loop. But I mean, a lot of programs or partnerships do wane or die out. And, it's kind of, how do you, encourage those who are like actively participating to participate more, while not, kind of just saying goodbye to the old ones necessarily. But I think if upfront the expectations for the partnerships are really clearly identified, and that goes into those document examples that I gave in terms of providing guidance, providing templates, even some example documents. If all of the expectations are really clear up front as to if you get to a year without having any communication, or 2 years, whatever the however you'd like to define it, we're going to be reconsidering things, and may list you as a historic partnership. maybe don't use the word inactive. Historic might be a better term, but that would then encourage the reporting, encourage even just check-ins, making sure that they're looking at how they're doing with the very beginning, taking it back to the arrangement, or if there is a work plan associated. So yeah, I think it all revolves around upfront expectation setting, and making sure that that is communicated from all parties. It goes into external communications piece, how you frame and tell stories and successes of sister park partnerships. It goes into the resources that are provided. It goes into the initial arrangement document as it's written, as it's signed off and approved. It goes into reporting expectations, or if MPSOA can do check-ins, or that yearly review of activity levels. It has to start from the beginning and then trickle down to everything else. So I'm not sure if that answered your question, but that's kind of what I was thinking about, and ties into that recommendation for me.
Yeah, no, that's very helpful. Thanks.
I like the idea of calling them historic partnerships. I think that is better than saying inactive. Maybe legacy partnerships.
Yeah, something like that.
Craig.
Sorry to jump in again, but I just wanted to ask a question and comment. Chris very accurately pointed out that the National Park Service here is viewed almost in awe by people associated with protected areas in other countries. But all of us that have been involved with this have found that that's not always the case, that we are the experts. I was astounded by the level of activities that's going on in some of these other parks. Our sister park in Wuyishan, their control room looks like CNN Central. I've never seen anything like that with the technology. At the Europark conference on climate change and sustainable tourism last year, the Russian delegate presented how they were using remote sensing and heat mapping to determine visitor crowding and visitor use management. Some of these concepts are beyond what we're doing in the Park Service. So I'm going to ask Steve, is there anything in place where we can track the assistance that comes our way? Because we're starting to look at not just sending assistance over to our sister parks, but bringing some of these experts in. We're looking at bringing in a mountain search and rescue ranger from Slovenia who's an expert in that and working for a 60 to 90-day detail with our park. We're looking at some environmental education specialists in our sister parks coming to us and working for us and teaching us techniques in 30 or 60 days. I think it would be really great if we had an inventory of all the help that comes our way to help convince senior management this isn't just a one-way issue. It's a collaborative process of cooperation.
That's an excellent point, Craig, because we're always having to defend not just the sister park work, but all of the international work we do. We have to constantly justify why we're doing it. And we do try to have examples like the ones you're mentioning, but I think a more systematic inventory would be great. So let us, send us some information about what's going on with your partners and where you're getting help, and we'll definitely, add that to our examples that we routinely bring out when we're getting questions about this.
And that also would be a great opportunity to, I touched on the external communications and sharing those success stories. It's not just that's a great point. It's not just the US, not just MPS going abroad and doing cool things. It's we're getting a lot of benefit from a lot of these partnerships too. And I think those also make really fabulous stories to share widely with the public, just to increase awareness about sister parks, but also the mission of conservation as a whole.
I don't see any other hands, but I just wanted to make an observation, and maybe in the interim somebody will think of a question. I think when we first started considering this study, I thought there would be some additional literature. That I think one of the steps we had in our outline for the project was to do a literature search and to see how much research had been done on this technique or this tool, the sister park twinning. And I think we were surprised to learn that there's really been very little attention paid to these kinds of programs to, assess how effective they are or what the track record is of how long they go. And so I feel like in a way, this is somewhat groundbreaking that your study, Chris, has, put down a marker, not to say there isn't more that could be done, but I'm frankly, I was really surprised that IUCN and some other agencies perhaps had not looked into the sister park model or the twinning model as a way to achieve conservation. Rick.
Yeah, that actually raised a question. I'm glad you brought that up. So, Chris, you mentioned you looked at some other agencies or groups that also maintain these kinds of relationships. So, in looking at those, did you see any great examples of really successful, productive partnerships? Not NPS, in other words, but other groups?
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, across the board had similar, challenges as, I outlined in the presentation. And it was, as I was doing the interviews, kind of, not reassuring, that's probably the wrong word, but as I was discovering that the challenges were similar, but, pulling these common themes that it wasn't just specifically for Sister Park, challenges. It was across the board, twinning partnerships and programs. So it's not just something that NPS is or isn't doing. It's very much across the board sort of thing. And so, I spoke with a couple other federal agencies, Fish and Wildlife Service, NOAA, and then the Forest Service, and they have had success in the past, but they also, their programs have kind of petered out because of lack of funding and shifting priorities of the administration. I think I saw probably the most success when it came to marine protected areas. And I talked with somebody who works for the EU Ocean Governance Project for marine protected areas. And I had a really great conversation with her and just kind of, and I think that's actually the one of the reports that I found. It was about marine protected areas. And so they have done a fair amount of work with that and looking into it and how to improve things. But that's more of the global, larger scale network connections. It's not so much individual parks or protected area twinning. And so that's more focused on like building networks, connecting networks. And I thought that was a really great approach to things. What else? Marine World Heritage as well with UNESCO. I spoke with somebody who worked for them, and same thing, looking at kind of the collaborative conservation models and twinning like whole groups of protected areas. And so that was something that was different and very interesting for me to chat with them about. Yeah, and then in terms of the biosphere reserves, I talked with somebody who is at Paul Smith's and works for the Champlain Adirondack Biosphere Network in New York, and they're paired with a biosphere network in Canada, just across the border. So they're very, very closely connected geographically, which may alleviate some other challenges that others might face. But they also talked a lot about the, connections they have with communities and universities. And so that's what has really allowed them to find some success with their activities, even though there's a lot of staff burnout and, so many other priorities on their plates that kind of limit them. Also, limited funding and things like that. But they've been able to collaborate in different ways than I saw with most of the Sister Park Initiative examples that I looked at.
Oh, Zach.
Yeah. Thanks, Chris. I just want to say first off, I'm really excited to read the report. I think you did an awesome job. I mean, you nailed so much of that. And I just wanted to share with folks on here too that it sounds like the organization I work with is that part of that second case study, which is this three-legged stool. And it's really interesting to hear about that in the other case with sister communities and talking about schools. And, you know, as a prior NPS employee and now working within the nonprofit, the private sector, we face a lot of challenges, but we're finding we're feeling very hopeful that this three-legged stool structure can really keep us going, right? Our situation is US and Mexico. We're not looking to get on planes and go, you know, visit each other and keep our partners connected. We have our own challenges working government to government there. But yeah, I just wanted to share that it's really helpful and I think motivating just to hear, you know, and see different faces talking about what they're doing. So I think in the outreach aspect of what your study really highlights, really elevating the value of this program and really just hearing what other NPS parks and their partners, their sister parks around the world are doing, I think is amazing. You know, internally within NPS, I'm sure, but just for you know, U.S. citizens, for world citizens, I think it's an amazing thing. So to keep celebrating what is happening and of course striving to make it more sustainable and more impactful. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, if no one else has any questions, I guess we can wrap it up. We're almost at the hour here. So I just want to say thanks one more time to Chris Biles for your excellent work. I think you can rest assured that your report's going to have an impact. And we'll keep you posted as we continue to, well, think about your recommendations and also see a pathway to how we can implement them. So thanks again, and thanks to everyone who tuned in. And if you know of others who want to listen, we did record this session, so we can make it widely available to anyone who's interested. Thank you.
Thank you,
Have a great
everyone.
day.